Hi, Shell.
Hi, Josh.
It's good to have you on the program.
Thank you for inviting me after I messaged you and said, can I please be on your show?
It was the least that I could do.
I
No,
got no shame.
I'm really glad you reached out. I'm still kind of recording for this season, so I welcome the efforts of others. And I just want to say, even though you did reach out, I am more than thrilled to have you on here. I think you're just an absolute delight and treat to chat to. We finally got to meet in person at Tails last year. And even though it was in the middle of a party, just spending time with you on that like one-on-one time was so much fun. All we did was like crack jokes and talk shit, but like that's how I knew I was like, this is a person for me. And I think your true personality like really resonates in all that you do. And I've been lucky enough to be on your program. And I think the work that you're doing through We Recover Loudly is exactly what I would hope something like No Proof would emulate, in that it's true, rich storytelling told by the people that experience their own lives, in hopes that that message can be heard by the folks that need it. So,
Yeah.
thanks for reaching out, and thanks for all that you do so far.
I feel bad now about my sassy comments, but that was so sweet. No,
No, no
yeah,
need.
absolutely. Back at you. And that's it. It's a privilege to do what we do. And it's a privilege to share a variety of stories and a variety of voices. And, when you were on my podcast, you were the first person I had that was quite calm and quiet. And I can remember being like, oh gosh, okay, I'm going to have to really figure out how to match that, and I was just completely thrown by it. I can remember, and I thought it was I remember, as you do, I hung up and I was like, oh god, I'm sure I sounded awful. Listen back, fucking hilarious. I was like, okay, we're fine. So yeah, I do. It's I think it's a real privilege to get to do what we do, but thank you so much for the nice words.
So let's back up a little bit on your story before the podcast came about, or the socks that I love came to be. Tell me a little bit about you. How would you describe, let's call it, your previous life?
It was the word that comes to mind. It was desperate. It was scrappy. It was continuous little explosions, self-created explosions of disaster. I was always desperately seeking achievement and praise and acceptance, and I was very much don't worry, we're not going too far back, but at school I was very much a B student, one of those. I was there. Strangely enough, I do have some friends still that have known me since I was 7, 8 years old, and they actually wouldn't describe me that way. They would say, no, you were very prominent, we knew you were there, but I felt very separate and just always very average, and yet desperately in the inside, always seeking for that moment that someone was going to look at me and go, oh, she's brilliant, whether it's art or, write a poem or just something. I was always desperately seeking it. And I did my degree in psychology, which I basically phoned in because it was really, it was a science-based versus what I was hoping to do, which was talk about Freud. So it was and while I was there, instead of being at lectures, I got a job in a local delicatessen, and that was my first kind of job in hospitality. And immediately just being in a place where I was serving food, and the exchange and the connection between, someone coming to you asking for something. And it's so simple, isn't it, hospitality? It's that simplicity. Hi, I want some cheese for my evening. Me being able to impart knowledge of said cheese. They take cheese away and think you're a fucking hero. It was just amazing. And I immediately was like, well, screw this education. But I did then do a master's degree, and I ended up in London, which is where I've always wanted to be. And yet again, I needed to work because I studied, I was trying to work in PR and A&R and music, and, as was everyone else who lives in Camden. So I had to get a job. And I started working in restaurants, in a restaurant called Gaucho, which is like an Argentine steak restaurant. And they are incredibly well known for their training. And that was it. As they say, that hospitality bite, you know, my whole life searching to be the best at something and to fall into something and to be in an environment where people were praising me, like, that was it for me. And I very quickly was like the head waitress, and I was doing the training. And where the restaurant was is an area called Hampstead Heath, lots of famous people. So like when the famous people, I would get those tables, you know, I served Tim Burton and all of that. So every day it was just my ego was just bloody loving it. And yeah, I learned so much about wine. I wanted to be a sommelier. Like it was such an exceptional way to start to learn how to be, I guess, to learn how to be a proper grown-up for the first time. You know, I really was coming into my own and finding an identity, and I loved it. And then sadly, you know, as unfortunately I think that's a lot of people's stories do start in our industry. You know, it started well, but I'm going to drop a little bombshell here, Josh. I'm neurodivergent. And didn't realise it at the time, I know. And so my ADHD, which was undiagnosed and only until like 3-4 years ago, I was constantly starting jobs and smashing it for like 6 months. And I was putting myself out, you know, I was working every hour and I was working at unsustainable levels. And then I was starting to fail, because that's what happens. And I didn't have the language to explain why I was failing, because I didn't know. And the only language that at the time, and again, our industry is changing, but at the time, the industry was very much, if you're not good enough, you're out, you know, because there was so many more people that were in our industry. It wasn't like now where we're struggling for team members. And so you would just constantly abandon your own needs, abandon your own beliefs, abandon anything that was keeping you stable and centered. And that's when I started to use alcohol for something other than what I had loved, which was sharing it with friends, sharing it with, you know, customers. And it became that crutch. And it's, you know, it does. You can probably hear in my voice. It still makes me sad that it ended that way.
Yeah.
But it did. And it was a nice slow progression too. There were a good 15 years of misery. Unfortunately. And then, switch fast forward to now, and then obviously getting into recovery and stuff like that. And my big mission after, as we do, I'm sure you relate to this, you get about 24 hours sober and you feel like a fucking god. And you're like, where is my Oscar? And, you know, and you kind of get very sassy. Give it a week's sobriety and you're like, well, I've solved everything. I've solved all of the problems of everything. And now I will go and tell others how to run their lives. So quite quickly, I just couldn't. And again, that's with that neurodivergence, with being ADHD and autistic. I can't allow an injustice, what I deem an injustice, to lay quiet. And I take responsibility for my journey and for where I ended up. But I couldn't say that hospitality in the industry didn't have a part to play. And I was angry, and I knew that I couldn't be the only one, which is why I then started We Recover Loudly, to say, right, there's got to be more than just me. Let's start collecting these voices and stories. Because if I had heard my story 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, maybe I would have taken a different path. Maybe I would have heard that identification and been like, oh yeah, you can work in our industry and not be an absolute cokehead, you know, or whatever it is. And it's funny because our it's so different now in such a short space of time, you know. I've only been doing it for like 2 years. Your podcast is what, 3 years? It's not been a long time.
Around 4. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but to see how different already it is it's quite remarkable. There's still work to do. But yeah, that was basically, in a nutshell, how we got to where we are now. And I'll tell you about the socks after.
So on the lead up to make the decision to remove alcohol, did that happen in steps, or was it all just kind of like one big wash of feelings? And deciding to remove it?
I think a lot of people, I've heard this from a lot of people, it's that it's everything but the alcohol that's the problem. It's the job, it's the stress, it's my mental health. I should be on different antidepressants. Also, side note, antidepressants don't work if you're drinking. So every time I'm changing medication and the doctor's going, how many units a week? And you're like, glass of wine if I'm having a steak, at the most.
Yeah.
Absolute lies.
Sure.
So I changed everything around it. I was vegan. I was even vegan for like 4 months. Bad decision. I was desperate to change. I knew something wasn't right. And it turns out it wasn't dairy and meat products. It was alcohol. But it was the last thing that my brain went, oh, could it be that? And it wasn't a decision that, and I didn't really make the decision. I got fired from a role. It was absolutely devastating, and I got fired. It was in the midst of COVID, and it was, and there's a whole separate story around that, and you can listen to it actually on my own podcast, because I interview the gentleman who fired me, who's still a very good friend. So there's a whole kind of thing around it, but it felt like the decision to stop drinking was very much at that point taken out of my hand. I had nothing left. I had no friends really, no job. My family was so angry at me because our family members don't understand. It's not their job to understand, so they can't have compassion at that stage. They do now, obviously. But then, even then, that was November 2020, and I didn't get sober till the September afterwards, because I did that fun thing that we like to do, which is prove that we don't have a problem with alcohol by not drinking it for a week. And then treating ourselves with a massive 3-day bender.
How did you get out of that cycle?
Again, it was one of those that was just, the decision was forced from me. I'd managed to, I would do a month and then have a binge session, and then I'd do 6 weeks and another binge session. And I had gone to an AA meeting in November. It was all online back then, and didn't identify with any of it. Absolutely not for me. I would go back now and then because, remember that little girl who was just desperate to be accepted and be the best at something? Well, I could go to the meeting and I'd make them all laugh because, again, hospitality, that's what we do. We put on a mask. So I'd show up, not for me, for them. Give them a laugh. Leave. Carry on drinking. You're welcome, guys. So there was probably a little bit of a seed planted. I was seeing other people, whereas, again, in hospitality, I think one of our big challenges is that, and I know it's changing, but if we look at just that immediate circle of people in your very average bar, average restaurant, you're not going to see people like me and you. We're the rare ones. So for me, seeing other people in a room, in something like a 12-step room, it was the first time around other people that don't choose to drink. I'd never experienced that. My only friends are hospitality friends. My only friends are the same ones that were getting wrecked on a Tuesday with me. And then it just got to the point where I think, because very much for me, it's not just about, putting down the drink was the first step. Then the bloody work has to start from the diagnoses, from understanding the why. So every time I was putting down the drink before, I wasn't asking myself, why am I drinking? I was just, all right, well, I'll stop drinking. Because I was doing nothing to nourish the why, or have no curiosity about the why, not nourishing myself, not anything else. It's like if you've got a wound and you just rip the plaster off and you just go like, all right, crack on. That's not how wounds work. You got to do something about it. And that's what I was doing. I was just walking around with all these open wounds going, oh yeah, fine. And eventually, and I still, I say, oh, I don't know why, but I hadn't drank for such a long time, it'd been about a month, and I grabbed a bottle, and my sister caught me, and she was so angry at me. Obviously, she screamed at me, and she was devastated, and I just thought, that's it, I'm out. And I got in my car, and I was just like, I can't do this anymore, and I drove it into what I thought was a wall on purpose, because I was just, I can't do this anymore. Turned out it was a bush, not a wall. So That is why I walked away from it, a little bit of a universe higher power moment. And therefore, it's a very dramatic way to come into your day one. But for me, there was nothing left to argue. There was nothing left for me to be able to say, oh, but I've still got a job. Oh, but I've this and that. I had nothing left. There was nothing left in the excuse pile. And so for me, well, I wish it hadn't have had to get quite so dramatic. And I don't think it does have to. And like I say, if only 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago, I'd had these examples like yourself, like myself, maybe, and this ability to be mindful, I was mindful about my choices. But I'm actually kind of grateful in a way that decision got taken away from me, because I never have to now second guess my choices. I know that it's not a good idea for me to ever drink again. It's
From
just gone.
that moment, I feel like if others were kind of like in that moment, it would be really easy to just continue digging yourself deeper. How did you see that moment and decide that it was going to be something that you would build from?
I wish I said it was that I was doing it for me. I think, to be honest, I was doing it to get everyone to leave me the fuck alone. Everyone was mad at me. Like, my sister, like I said, was devastated, my family. And you've got to remember that anger is fear. And at the time I didn't realise that. I was like, why is everyone angry? Why is everyone shouting at me? Poor me, poor me. But anger is fear, and they were fucking terrified. And that was the way they knew how to express it. And I just wanted everybody to leave me alone. And that was the reason I was drinking, was because I wanted to be alone. And I wanted, the moment I was alone, though, then I couldn't bear the thoughts in my head. So I was like, and I just did it to get everyone off my back. But because I connected to a program, and there are many ways that you can get sober, by the way, but the thing about, and you and I know Ben's friends, and I bloody love Ben's friends and Mickey and the whole team. And the reason that I think things like 12-step and Ben's friends and all that are so powerful is, for the first time ever, I connected with somebody who had my story. And I met this girl on my day zero in a meeting, stood there all covered in bruises, my day zero. And I'd met some of these people online, because we were in person by then. So I'd seen some of these people on the online meetings, and this girl sat next to me, and she was the same kind of age, and she just shared how when she looked in the mirror, she hated herself. And I looked at her and I was like, I hate myself when I look in the mirror. And, she came up to me afterwards and was, she said something like, oh, I like your hair clips, something like that, things that us girls do. And I was like, oh, she likes her hair clips, let's be besties. And it was just that immediate identification. And within 1 week, I had more friends and more people calling me to ask me if I was okay, and more phone numbers than I'd had probably in the previous 10 years of what I thought was friendship and hospitality, family. And that, for me, is the biggest, I think, regardless of how you get sober, that, I think, for me, is the underlining key in all of these brilliant programs and ways of all that, is meeting somebody on, and again, and this is now why we do what we do, is meeting someone that you can go, oh, I thought I was the only one. And that's it. So yeah, so it was really, and I've got photos of me and like 1 month sober, and you just look at those two pictures side by side, and it's like the change in such a short time. The difference, though, from when I was previously doing it was, like I say, I was ripping off the bandage and I had open wounds and I was doing fuck all to make sure I was okay. This time, I had people with me, I was there on the phone, I was loved, I was held. We say in AA that we will love you until you can love yourself. Very cheesy, but it's true. So for the first time ever, I felt that people loved me for where I was. No conditions. No, we'll love you when you're better. No, which is where my family were at that time, because of all of the fear and that. So yeah, it's a really powerful, I think, that's where the power is. I think I came into it because I just wanted everyone to leave me the fuck alone, and I was fed up of being in trouble. And then I was just, swept up into the embrace of others who said, I see you, I've been you. It doesn't have to be this way. And you're like, okay.
How did it feel to You're obviously at day zero, you feel broken. You can start to rebuild yourself. You go to these meetings and you start hearing some of those cheesy phrases, but you're internalizing them. You're flipping them into your own words so you can actually work them. Beyond how you are feeling in these meetings and your kind of like take home from that, how did you make that actionable? How did you start working your sobriety into the outward life?
For me, it was a package of things that I wasn't doing for myself. Like I said, I abandoned all of my needs quite early on in my career. So sobriety to me is not just about stopping drinking. There was a lot of other things that I had to start adding. So, we take one thing away. We take away alcohol. And for me, it wasn't just about adding one thing back in. There was a lot that had to be. And it was stuff like I worked with a nutritionist for a little while because my gut health, weirdly enough, was absolutely awful. And, we now know the link between our mental health and our gut health, and that it is the second brain. And so learning and having probiotics and learning about the right foods and stuff immediately then my brain was working. Weirdly enough, not drinking, my antidepressants started working. I'm a big believer that if you need that, then you should have it. And side note, I actually stopped taking my antidepressants this summer when I went on to HRT, and I just went back on them 3 weeks ago, and I felt like a massive failure for going back on them. And so I'm telling myself from 3 weeks ago, listen to what you're saying right now. You're not, sometimes we do need those things, and it's okay. So yeah, I did that. I started to move my body, and I did some things that I also didn't enjoy. I did journaling. That sucked. Don't like it. Rubbish. But I did breath work. That was it. I got really into breath work. Again, not into it anymore. ADHD. Breathwork teacher, don't do it anymore. 2-week turnaround. But I got really into breathwork, and breathwork teaches you about breath. And I don't know, the moment you say to somebody breathwork, you realise that oh God, it's been ages since I actually had a breath. And I realised that I'd probably been holding my breath for 37 years, and I'd always had a problem with swallowing my whole life. I've been to doctors, hospitals. I would choke a lot on food, and it would be all sorts of foods and stuff like that. The moment I stopped drinking, I stopped choking, because suddenly my throat, the tension that I was always feeling in my body, the stress, the ducking and diving went. So it was like, it wasn't just a case of like stopping the drink. It was like, what else am I adding in? And it was about immediate, that awareness. And like I say, I dropped a load of it as well. It's just like, it's not one size fits all. And I had a lot of shame about, this does link into something. This is why We Recover Loudly is as brash as it is. I had a lot of shame about the fact that there's almost like a sober, I don't know if archetype's the right word, but there's like a sober person. I do yoga. I'm a nice human. I wear lavender clothes, and I'm a sober man. I go running. I'm vegan. Yeah, what on earth is that? And all of this stuff. And I never really connected with that as well. And again, that was probably took me a good kind of 18 months to kind of move through that too. But yeah, in answer to, I think what your question was, it wasn't a case of just one thing to get that kind of that good sobriety. It was about really looking and leaning into and being curious and trying different things. I did a sound bath. That was shit. The person next to me was snoring the whole time. So you're there like, and there's someone snoring. I'm like, I'm not going to pay 25 quid to listen to some stranger snore. I've stopped that lifestyle now. I'm sober now. And yeah, I think that was probably just lived life. I hadn't lived. I've been working. We don't live when we work in hospitality,
Yeah, it's very difficult.
Was talking to our mutual friend, Miss Laura Green, about how when people apply for jobs and they say, what do you do outside work? I do tennis, I run, I've got a partner, we like to do walks. And they go, brilliant, we love that, really well-rounded. You start working. No, you can't have time off for tennis. No, you can't have time off for that. And it's so ridiculous because we desperately, we seek these well-rounded individuals, and then we say, no, 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 no. You have to work 80 hours, I'm afraid. But we did hire you because of the tennis.
Yeah, we like what makes you you, but never speak of it or do it again.
Yeah, right. We hired you because you're an individual, but can you please forget all of that now?
All in line.
Yeah. Oh, God. It is a great industry, though. I shouldn't be quite so glib about it, but yeah.
No, I totally agree. And it was, early on in my sobriety, I thought that I might have to leave it. And it wasn't because I was afraid of standing behind a bar with open availability of the bottles, It was, I had the thought that nobody would take me seriously again. And that was like one of the most sad realizations that I had about myself, is that I had tethered so much of my personality to consumption, that I thought someone won't take me seriously if I don't do this. And I really had to uncouple a lot of that thinking of everything that you get credit for, or any of the accomplishments, or any of the things that people like champion about you. No one's like, oh, have you met Josh? He's awesome at having more drinks than he should, more times throughout the week than an average human being should have. And he's really good about feeling bad about himself the day after for that. No one ever said that. But we were like, hey, you're a really great storyteller. Like, thank you for educating me on this brand or whatever. Like, none of those things went hand in hand. But I had put so much of my personality into it that I thought it would all wash away if I gave that up. And I'm really glad that I had that realization, because then I could dig my heels in and become better within hospitality. It made me a better bartender. It made me a much better leader. 100%. It made me a much better team member, to just accurately be able to talk about those things and to lead a team and actually be more of my personality than whatever character I had created behind the bottle.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you think about, like, a history teacher, nobody says to the history teacher, like, I'm so sorry, but can you not teach anybody about ancient Egypt because you weren't there? No, we learn about it, and you're right, because exactly the same. Nobody said to me, oh, Shell's a great manager, because what she does is she works way over her limits. She doesn't eat. She's basically developed an eating disorder. She smokes, and then she drinks copious amounts. And then what she sometimes does is she calls in really last minute and doesn't even bother to come to her shift. We've missed that about her. No, they love the fact that I was a positive person. I love a team. There's nothing more enjoyable to me than training another person and watching them fly and imparting knowledge that I have about something to others, much like a teacher would, and that's exactly. And we're just so much better at it. I wish that we could almost put that on the top of a CV. That's the future I want to see. I want to see bartender CVs going in with, sorry, are you not sober? Probably not going to work for us. Because we're better at our jobs. It doesn't mean that you can't ever drink. And if that is something that is still part of your life in a positive way, then fucking brilliant, crack on. And, we've got mutual friends, we've got loads of people that do that. And I really admire when you see these reps that have been in the role for years and years. They're normally whiskey reps, weirdly. They don't seem to move on. What's going on there? Because that they've done it in a very boundaried way, because they've always, the ones that go home, the ones that say thank you so much for the training and then leave. They don't stay there and try and shag the bartenders, not a true story. Things like that. It is possible to do it. But only, I think, you have to have, you really have to have a really strong sense of self and boundaries. I've said that word a few times. I didn't know boundaries, and we don't celebrate boundaries in our industry. We love people that don't know how to spell or say boundaries. We're all dyslexic anyway. And that's the problem, And I think that, like you say, I vividly remember sitting at the bar in Club Soda in London, and Noah was still working there, and he was passing me little tastes of things, and I remember just thinking, I thought I'd never do this again. I thought I'd never be able to sit in a bar and have a taste of something off the back of a bar, And we close ourselves off sometimes, I think, to experiences because, oh, well, I'm sober, I can't do these things now.
Yeah.
You know, you can do them, but you just do them a little bit differently, you know?
There's a really great interview with Josh Brolin that I read recently where he he says he wants to live life drunkenly. He's
Oh, I
a
like
sober
that.
person, and just the whole idea of like arriving to life with that unabashed like who gives a shit mentality that like we happens to us like when we drink. And I totally agree with you because sometimes I get that feeling where I close myself off just because I think, well, you're sober, so you can't be as fun as you want to be. You have to be kind of the solemn, reserved individual. But as of late, I'm like, fuck that. Like I am fun and funny, and I want to go out there and be silly in a way that like fulfills me, not in the way that like if I wake up and I see a video of what I did, I'm like ashamed of it, kind of way. But that just
I love that quote, but I also think that that comes with time. And you and I have got a similar sobriety. You are ahead of me, but I think that comes with time, because Shell at 1 year sober versus 2 versus 3, and I'll be 4 in like 6 months, so I'm not quite there. Now I can go and be in a social situation, like you say, and be silly. But yeah, I definitely felt, and it was a self-imposed, but I felt a weight of, you're sober now, so you should be serious. And has anyone read a book recently? Should we talk about it? I
Yeah.
haven't read it, but you know, and I can remember I went to see my cousins, my family's all from South Africa, so they're all still there. So we were there last March for a wedding, and it was the first time I'd seen them in person since the last time, where it had been drinking, and you know, it'd all been a bit traumatic. And I said to the one cousin, like, oh, you know, I'm so different now, and you know, I'm sorry, I'm just so different. And he was like, you're exactly the same. I was like, oh. And it's all in there, you know. I thought that they were going to be like, whoa, she is quiet, she's boring, she's like, you know, they were like, you're exactly the same. He was like, there's no difference. I was like, oh, all right then.
I mean,
But
there's
we
a lot
do, we
to that.
create that
It's like
stories.
how much we keep up here that we don't share when you're drinking, because you'd be so ashamed if you told the whole story. You don't want that burden to live with others. You know, you don't tell everybody about the secret drinks or the like hidden bottle you might have somewhere, or the shot you did by yourself when you were getting like around for others. Like, it'd be so embarrassing if everybody knew. So of course some of the people around us, like, it doesn't appear too differently because they didn't have to live with all that quiet.
Yeah, you're right, because we're like living a secret life. And you're right, we've kind of walked away from a secret life that in the rooms of recovery, yeah, we share about it. But yeah, I don't share about that stuff with just, you know, my family or my normal friends, because it's too difficult for them to understand it. And therefore, again, that's going back to like that sobriety, the early sobriety, why I think it's so important to find a tribe wherever you find them, whether it's on Instagram, whether it's in a meeting, whatever it is, because they don't understand. And actually it's good that they don't understand what it would be like to go to a bar and have a secret shot. And I don't know about you, but I would do it in such a way that I was so disassociated from that behaviour. And I do it now sometimes with sugar, and every time I notice I'm slipping like that with sugar, I have a sugar ban. I'll go shopping and there'll be a chocolate bar in the basket, and I'll be like, it'll like throw in. We're doing videos now, aren't we? This was my chocolate bar I was throwing. You know, I won't even look it in the eye. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not even looked at, it's in the basket, and it'll be scanned, and I'll get it home, and I'll eat it, and then I hide the wrapper. I live alone. Who the fuck am I hiding the wrapper from? And it's like that real, you know, that whole, like, and obviously I also now, again, because you're sober, I have the ability to examine those behaviours, and I know why I slip down and now, and it will be because of something else. Also, because sugar's bloody addictive, and then I'll be able to just have that break. Oh God, coming off sugar, so much harder than anything I've given up. Don't kid yourself then that you can just have one, Josh, because you can't.
No, I had to completely remove it because I knew I always had a bit of a sweet tooth, but when I stopped drinking, like my sugar level was just
goes mental.
insane, and I never thought about it. And then I was running a trail race, slipped on a route, broke my foot, and put on like 30 pounds in like a month and a half. And
Wow.
I looked in the mirror one day and I was like, I know what has to go. And pretty much all of the behavior that I thought would happen when I gave up drinking happened when I gave up sugar, but like they were so deeply related in the way that it was like activated in my brain. Like I had like a little portion of our shelf in the pantry that where like my sweets would live. And when I got rid of them, like in the first month, like in the first like 2 weeks, I would catch myself going to the pantry and just staring there like an insane person. And I was like, you have to like jump out of it and like go eat an apple. But then I love the way that like my brain feels when I eat an apple, because like I don't feel like you can be an addict to fruit. Like I've never seen anybody eat an apple and then go and start eating a second apple. Like that would look like insane behavior. But for whatever reason, I can hollow out a bag of Haribo and nobody raises an eye.
So true. Oh my God, that's so true. Like if you were sat there just like eating four like bunches of broccoli, people would be like, she got a problem.
Yeah.
Like, but you're right as well. Like I would like behaviors that I never even used to do while I was drinking. I would bargain with myself. So I would do the things like, well, I'm only going to have, so like my drinking was very, very boring, and you know, I'll hear stories of other people's recovery and I'll think, God, they had way more fun, and, you know, like all of this stuff and like, you know, the bargaining and the game playing. I never used to do that. But with chocolate, I'd be like, okay, well, I'm only going to have this one because it's a Friday. So that's the new rule. And you start putting all these little rules in. It's like, well, I'll only eat chocolate, but I'll only eat a hazelnut chocolate because nuts are protein. And I'll only eat it if it's, and then it'll be just like a particular brand. And it's the same that people with alcohol will start, okay, I'll only drink rosé wine. Okay, but I'm only going to drink the beer, and you start to try and create this really disordered behavior. You try and create some sense of normality to it, and it's impossible because it's not normal. And you're right, the sugar thing for me was just, and I think it was maybe 4 weeks ago or something, I was in London visiting my sister, and I can't remember why, but I broke my little detox. And again, like with drinking, whoa, it's quick, you go so far back. I think it was like, we had some like a cake or something like that. And then within about 4 hours, I'd had 2 Kit Kat Junkies and 2 bags of something else secretly while she slept. What? Like, from having a pudding?
Yeah.
How does it escalate to that within 3-4 hours? And then, like, yeah, so then obviously I'd done it then. So the next day, you know, it was the same. So came back from London to Bournemouth like 2 days later, and it was like the shakes. And I have lovely, some of the, you know, I've got really, again, I never used to have female friends, but in sobriety, I've got these incredible women, all gorgeous, roaring, sober women in my life now. And I was saying to them, it's like I'm actually scratching in bed. Like, there's a newsagent down the road. I could just go and get some Reese's peanut butter cups in my thing. I'll just get
Really
one peanut butter cup. I'll just have one peanut butter, just one. It'll just be the one. Disgraceful. I make my own now with dates and peanut butter, organic peanut butter, and 85%. Because we're fucking sober wankers, Josh. That's why.
We eat the same crap. I just finished off my bark last week. I gotta re-up my stash.
Oh my God, yeah, I've still got a good stash. I've got to have at least kind of like 6 peanut butter stuffed dates, and then I cover with the 85% chocolate, and then I put like little dried raspberries or like some cacao nibs. Mm-hmm. It's all theatre things to them. But yeah, like, but now I'm addicted to those. So we don't have them in the fridge, but at least they're a little bit better. I'm on a 2 to 3 a day limit. Bloody addicts, what we like.
Earlier on, you were talking about, you know, giving up drinking is the first thing that you do. And that's really become like a part of the way that I talk about it, is that I feel like I got sober, and then even for myself, and then what I thought people would hear from me when I was talking is like, I thought when I spoke, people would be like, okay, that's not just Josh saying that. That is Josh who is sober. He's got to put it through this filter. I'm hearing that through somebody who had a problem and had to give up drinking. So keep that in mind. When you hear what he has to say, keep in mind that he had to like give up drinking. And I like carried that with me for a long time, and thinking that like even my own thoughts or things that I would say, that I had to pass through this like sobriety filter. I had to like check in and be like, am I doing sobriety right? Like, would a sober person say this? And I caught myself kind of like becoming a character again, putting on a face. And then eventually to what you were saying about early sobriety versus how you kind of like wear it now is like, I felt that sort of like wash away. I didn't have to kind of like give myself a comma or a stutter step before each thought. Like my sobriety was just, it was me. I didn't feel the need to like say that I'm sober. I didn't feel like I had to like clarify anything. It was just like, this is the thought or expression of Josh, who just happens to be sober. Like that doesn't have to be like the first piece of it, you know?
I
How
think
have
it's
you
tricky
noticed
though. I think if you think about it, like, so when you're someone like you or I, regardless of how our rock bottoms or our day ones and that presented, we were still very much associated with drinking. That was our part of our personality. So it's like suddenly you having a shaved head the next day. Like, we're going to want to talk about it because, Josh, this is a huge change. You know, like, we can't just expect to walk in a room and have no one go like, he's just shaved his head. Because it's such a huge part of the way that people identify us. But you know, slowly but surely, as we know, when people have things like physically outside dramatic changes, we do get used to it and stuff. But again, I think even like something like a shaved head, you know, like we do, we'll talk about it. I don't know about you, that's all I talked about for the first 2 years, or probably, because I think there was a combination of me confirming subconsciously to myself that I was sober, externally confirming to others that I am still sober. You know, like I can remember I did like my first AA meeting. I was like, I'm not going to be one of those AA people and only talk about recovery. I think that was what I said to my parents. And fast forward 6 months later, I had like 78 service positions. And I was like, you know, basically me and Bill W were like, woo! And now, like you say, because I think, again, we then get that self-confidence that we know that while it's always one day at a time, and while, you know, I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, I have so much more security to kind of have a pretty good idea what tomorrow's going to be, that I can be a little bit looser in it. And that's kind of, for me as well, was like, I've lived my whole life inauthentically in fear. I can't now do the biggest thing that I could probably do at that time, which is put down alcohol when I was still as well in an industry that was so soaked in alcohol, much like if you were to shave your head. You know, I can't do something that big and then, to continue the analogy, put a wig on. You know, I can't then put on another identity. I've done it now. So now it's time to allow it to really, really kind of just give it that time. That's like I said earlier, it's time. You've got to give it time. But that also nicely segues into my merchandise line. Nicely done. And the reason behind, and I've got loads more, I was just testing the waters, so I've only released one pair of socks at the minute, but there is a whole plan of like bags and badges and other bits and bobs. And it's got a naughty word on it, because I don't think that just because we're sober, we have to suddenly be these angelic, wonderful people. And, you know, a lot of people are sober and still massive cunts. And that's okay. Let's be proud of that. And it's been really amazing. Like, I've nearly sold out, which is mental. And there's people tagging them, and there's this kind of feeling, again, connection, community. Are you a sober cunt? I am. It's allowing people to say, yeah, I'm sober, but I'm not going to change everything. Just take that pressure off. You're sober, you're not perfect. Do you know? Like, it's okay. And the other thing I will quickly say about this, which I find really interesting, I can't pretend I did this on purpose, but I shouldn't have said that. The word sober and the word cunt. So the word cunt is a very... what's the word? It's a very divisive word. You know, people hate it or they love it. I was going to say especially in England, but I don't think the Americans like it that much. But it's a naughty word. It's a
It
bad
does sound
word.
way different if I say it in my accent versus
Yeah,
if
it
you
doesn't
say
sound as naughty. It's not at all. But it's a bad word, you know. It's like the worst swear word a person can say. And you put it next to a word sober. Now, for someone like you or me, 3, 4, 5 years ago, it's the worst thing that you could have said about us. Sober. And the juxtaposition of the worst swear word with what is potentially the worst thing you could actually be ever called. I'd rather be called a cunt than sober. To put those two words together, like I say, I wish I had done this on purpose, but I actually think it's got this really kind of beautiful statement. Like, what am I more worried about people seeing on my socks, the word sober or the word cunt? If it's the word sober, well, that's interesting, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Which word offends you more?
Yeah, wow.
All intentional.
Love that.
So yeah, there'll be way more of those coming out.
I mean, it sounds like people love it. Like, what sort of reactions are you getting from those that are picking them up?
Yeah, I mean, my mum doesn't like them, but that's fine. And will you be doing anything without a swear word? I responded with, weirdly enough, Mother, I haven't set this merchandise company up purely for you. So, the other word the big thing that I talk about a lot with sobriety is smugness. I feel so smug 99% of the time when I wake up. Right now, the reason that I was a little bit late for our recording is because I was doing a cold swim. And I feel very smug about the fact that the moment I got on this call, what did I tell you? I've just been for a cold swim. I'm so smug about it. I love waking up on a Saturday and just rolling around and not being hungover, and I feel fucking brilliant. And it's like I think it's when people have expensive cars and they just feel really smug. It's like that. And so, yeah, there'll be a range of socks that say sober and smug, and I've got this whole like sober and smug morning club kind of vibe coming out because, yeah, there's nothing better than just sitting in the morning, cup of coffee, just feeling really smug about my life choices.
I totally can relate. I mean, as somebody who used to wake up in the afternoon, like I just got back from Arizona Cocktail Week, and the old me would have participated deep into the night, woken up super late. And it's like when I'm smug, I feel like I'm not being smug to others. I'm being smug to that version of myself. Because
100%.
On one of the mornings, I woke up at 6 a.m. and I went for a 14-mile run where in that run, I climbed and descended a mountain. So to get back and knowing that others are still asleep and hungover and they wake up and they're like, oh, I feel like crap. I'm like, oh, I don't, because I ran 14 miles and I climbed a mountain this morning. But anyway, see ya.
Whatever. I mean, you do feel a little bit smug towards others then.
Yeah.
No, it's true. We were both at Tales last year, and it was just so nice to wake up and experience New Orleans. Like, it was just, like, the streets were empty because it was early, and just to actually be able to move around the city, because it was very different by the time it was in the evening. It was incredible. But again, I was like, I've actually gotten to see parts of the city that I wouldn't have been able to see. And, it was such a gift to be there, and it was such a privilege to be there. I never thought I'd get to Tales. I wanted to go to Tales for 15 years. And I never thought that would be part of my journey when I put down alcohol. So to be there and to be there to speak about it was just like about not drinking. It was, again, so that was very smug. You can probably see my sign behind me. It's still there, cut from my table. Pride of place. Don't know where my degree certificate is, but that's that.
It's the most recent thing.
Absolutely. So yeah, smugness. So there will be some stuff that isn't quite so naughty, but I like that. Sober gym wanker, sober running wanker.
I want that one.
Right? And again, I think it's about claiming that identity and just loving it. And it's all right to be you, but be sober you. You don't need to be more than that,
What do you love about yourself?
I love about myself that I am a person that is very excited about others, and I am excited about possibility, and I'm a curious person, and I'm a creative person, and these are all things that I was not when I was drinking. And I am full of energy, and I will get behind anything that I believe in with every part of me. And I'm quite tenacious. I've been described as, and relentless. But I think that those are all really good things. And I used to pour all of that energy into work and into a job. And now I get to pour that into me and helping others and building and all of that. And that's I'm really grateful that I didn't lose that feistiness and that fire when I put down the alcohol. I've actually just learned how to channel it into something that is nourishing and fulfilling versus always for other, because that's the service industry. It's other, everything else, pour from my empty cup. So I think I definitely love that about myself. And I'm a sausage dog owner. So that's like the main part of my personality is Milo, who's over there somewhere. So yeah, that is what I like about myself, that I have a sausage dog.
Others like that about you too.
Right? Yeah, literally. Every time I put any time into my socials, I don't know why I bother, because when I put him on there, it's like thousands of views. Like, I did a video of my 1 year sobriety. I did this really heartfelt. It was one of the first times I've been really open about my journey before the podcast. I put all my coins down. I really beautiful voiceover. I got about 600 views. Put a video of him running towards his grandma. 25,000 within a day. Arsehole. He didn't even give up drinking, and he's got that many views. He's looking at me now like, what? So yeah, anyway.
Well, thank you for this conversation. As I thought it would be, it was fun, funny, informative, and lovely. It's always great to spend time with you.
Oh, you too. Well, see, that's the thing, because I did a cold swim, you got... Crazy show. Catch me after a hot shower. Very smug, very cuntish, and very happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. And thank you for having this incredible platform and this incredible space for sharing just every story that you do, because it's this work is just so important. So privileged to stand alongside you doing it.